can start off with that, sir.
Okay.
Are we ready to start?
I think we are. So, welcome everybody. I'm Josh, also known as Cujo, and we also have Dave, president of the FPVFC, and we got Dan with us, as
And
well as Alex.
and
So,
we have the other David
oh,
Webb.
we do have David. Hi, David. Welcome. Obviously we've got some stuff to talk about: remote ID, the drone advisory committee, as well as some interesting news articles, some stuff that popped up at CES, and a few other things. So, Dave, I'll let you start off with some of the DAC stuff and
Well,
kind of go from there.
So, an interesting DAC tasking group that we're working on. Alex is working on it, and so is Elias, which is great. Uh, more representation from people who know what they're talking about, and also in recreational. It's a great thing. The topic of the tasking group is create better situational awareness for manned as well as unmanned aircraft in low altitudes. So we've got the subgroup I'm working on is chaired by um, Mark Colburn, DAC member, great guy, Colonel retired just now in the Dallas Police Department, 30 years helicopter experience in the police, and also military background prior to that. So one of the things that has come up and again is notify and fly. And so the idea with this is pretty much what we put in as FPVFC into the comments of the NPRM for remote ID, which is we would like, instead of having restrictions of where to fly, we would like to be able to pull out our phones, describe a little three-dimensional shape. This is where I'm going to fly. Send. I'm done. No remote ID equipage on the drone.
And
no equipment. No transponders.
that was sort of like the demo that was done with Google's Wing and maybe flight test guys in that video
Yeah.
from a year ago or so.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And so Kenji Sukahara, new DAC member, along with Vic Moss, is pushing Notify and Fly to anyone and everyone, and we're delighted and grateful, and we're pushing it as well. So it's because this is one of the things that when we talk about the remote ID final rule, that we felt, boy, it would have been nice if the FAA had said, in addition for recreational flying, you can do Notify and Fly, because of course for us outside of a FRIA, we now have to have some type of remote ID equipment on the UAS.
Yeah,
So
I think that would be a great option to have for people.
Dave, is that similar to Lance? Like the idea
yeah,
of Lance?
the idea is it would be to extend Lance and so to extend it with a geometric shape, three-dimensional shape, as well as a location, as well as some type of identification.
Isn't that what Lance is right
I
now?
think Lance does let you do that in the app.
Yeah, it does. I've done it before. I've done it before, like multiple times, different airports, and yeah, you specify altitude and you specify a four points, 4-digit, or just 4 points, and you literally you touch the point and you drag it into square or just 4-digit
Yeah,
shape.
it starts off as a square, but you can usually drag the corners to wherever you want them to be.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
The problem with that, though, is not everywhere accepts Lance authorization. So how are they going to implement this?
No, the idea is you could use it anywhere,
correct.
any
That would be the new part.
uncontrolled
Right,
airspace.
Exactly. Yeah, because Lance is, as you point out, Matt, is that Lance today is for controlled airspace, and we're requesting that it would be beyond all uncontrolled airspace as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's not like you're requesting the permission to fly. It's more of you're notifying anyone else that you are flying.
Correct. And Zarg has a point here on the text. He's saying basically just like geofencing. And I would say no, not at all. This is we are stating, and as Dan just said, we're declaring this is where I am going to fly, as opposed to an electronic capability that would stop us or prevent us from flying. TextJet saying, he said that the FAA already said no to this. Do we think the DAC can convince them otherwise? The FAA declined to respond to the first time actually to the several times we put this in. So we submitted this in the response to the NPRM. No comments no response there. We also submitted it from the DAC to the FAA in the UAS facility map recommendations. No response there. So we're just going to keep working it. So our answer is yeah, we're going to we'll give it a shot. Yeah, very basic flight plan. That's a good characterization.
Yeah, and it's not like it would be the only option. Like you still have the options that they have in the final rule, but this would be an additional option for compliance.
Which keeps the equipment, I mean, essentially off your drone, and it's, this would be great for setting up, races and stuff like that, right?
I would think so.
Oh,
And in places
absolutely.
that have no internet access, then if your phone doesn't work, then you have those other options to fall back on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Yesterday during that meeting, they talked a lot about they talked a lot about ADS-B and trying to integrate manned with unmanned. And I thought when we talked last, maybe I misunderstood, but we thought we talked about ADS-B was not going to be we didn't want to send too much information to the manned aircraft. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a couple of points on on my background on ADS-B, and correct me where I'm wrong, Elias. In the final rule, the FAA declared ADS-B out is not going to be part of RID, or that's and as they mentioned in the NPRM, we're very worried about oversaturating the spectrum of the two spectrums that we use in the United States. What is it, 978 and 1010? Help me, 1090, 1080.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yep.
And so one of what we're tossing around in the DAC is the ability to expand on what DJI is doing today, which is to pick up ADS-B in. So where it is broadcast, we can right. ADS-B is verboten for ADS-B out. Yep, we agree with that. So if a drone can pick it up, that's great, and then we'll alert the UAS pilot that hey, you've got a full size aircraft near you. And I
What
think
would be
that's
the benefit? I mean, so what would be the benefit in that? Because we already, besides, I think I heard someone saying during that meeting, besides helicopters, fixed wing aircraft are already staying above 500 feet.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
they're
with the
supposed to.
exception, they're supposed to, but there are exceptions to that. So,
Yeah,
you've got
law enforcement.
crop dusting, law enforcement, that kind of thing. There's also certain areas where they are allowed to dip below that. But I mean, even still, that's just more information. So, I mean, I live in the Phoenix Metro area. So, if you're a helicopter pilot, how saturated is your ADS-B system going to be with, you've got a city of, I don't know, let's say 5 million people. And what percentage of those are flying drones at any given moment, and how saturated is your system going to be? You see, I mean, ADS-B is, I mean, it's definitely a solution, but it's a solution for no problem. I mean, essentially, right now, as it stands, we're already responsible for giving way to manned aviation. So there should be no condition, essentially, where a manned aviation pilot would need to give way to us, with the exception of maybe some experimental thing or whatever. In which case, I'm sure the FAA would do their thing, but it's on us to avoid that, and it's on us. Has been a thing for a long time, and we've got an excellent safety record. So it's a solution with no problem. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just don't understand why. What's the point of having a drone have ADS-B in to be able to see manned aircraft? Like, what? Like you said, what problem is that solving? Why are we even looking at that?
So, I mean, essentially, I mean, theoretically, if it's for the drone operator to see manned pilots, it gives you a theoretical better expectation of what's in the air around you.
Sort of like
But
that
that
alarm system that Bruce Simpson designed, where you'd have a little radio sitting next to you that buzzes and beeps and lets you know if an aircraft is headed your way.
Yeah, I think
so
that the problem we're trying to solve is improved situational awareness. Just that simple. It's not a detect
Okay.
and avoid, but just
So
raise the awareness.
for UAS users only in this scenario.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No, good question.
Just
And
trying to
then
understand what the
but then
point of
it's
that.
right. Yeah. Then it's the other way through. It's like, okay, situational awareness for the manned operator. One of the discussions in this DAC tasking group is, oh my gosh, now that we don't have networking, what are we going to do? Because the UTM or unmanned traffic management was based on a network system. So we're hashing through that. How do the FAA think any of this will fix issues? Sorry, that are present illegal pilots will still fly
Yeah,
illegally.
illegal pilots are still going to do illegal things. Remote
Right.
ID is not going to make any difference.
Yep, fair point. And yeah, there are no shortage of counter UAS companies in the United States selling their product to federal officials at this point. And I suspect that we'll see some of those work their way into regulations. So good point. I absolutely agree. You know, what we're doing is trying. This is ostensibly for safety. We know that there's a security motivation, and it's for people who will be adhering or obeying the laws.
yeah, I mean, until there's a system to, I mean, essentially detect a drone that's not flying with remote ID, which I'm sure somebody's already working on that. There's not going to be a way to, you know, technically enforce it unless, you're doing something you shouldn't. Law enforcement, Joe Bob comes up to you and says, "Hey, you can't be flying here. Do you have, your papers? Do you have your remote ID? Do you have all your, ducks in a row?" And if you don't, then you're going to be you're going to run into some issues. So, I mean, it's going to be a what happens when you get stopped kind of situation. To answer your question, Zarg.
Have they talked about? I know this is kind of off topic, but have they talked about any kind of like county or town level law enforcement training yet?
Not to my knowledge. Dave, you might have better input on that. However, they did talk about enforcement in the remote ID document, but they basically just said it's gonna, it's gonna be the way it has been, and which is gonna be basically, essentially a law enforcement officer makes a stop, they refer it to the LEAP program, which is the law enforcement assistance program at the FAA. The FAA picks it up from there, determines what happens at that point.
I
And I
thought all the
think
neighborhood watch people were going to report you with an app on their phone when they see illegal activity.
and there's that. So to answer Matt's question, the FAA safety team or FAASTAEAM is one of the avenues in the drone pros. So there are a number of UAS education initiatives going out through this. So that it's an organization that exists for general aviation today, and it is adding a fair amount of drone activity to their work. And I suspect that will be the method and the vehicle that they'll use to roll out education on this. Maybe folks in some neighborhoods. Yep, there will.
It'll be
definitely
interesting to see how the FAA actually does that with
Hey,
the
we
number
have
of individual law enforcement departments around the country. Different you've got the city police, you've got state police, you've got highway patrol, you've got, I mean, all these different divisions even within a city. So it'll be
so
interesting to see how effective that is.
Yeah,
we
we
have
kind of can't do that now. like most people, I mean, there have been people that have been arrested and forbidden from flying because of inability to understand the what was the current law at the time. So now I feel like that's going to be possibly a lot worse.
And it can be, I think, as that's not to say that law enforcement shouldn't know what the rules are, because 100% absolutely they should. Um, However, I mean, personally, I don't know about you, Matt, or anybody else. I generally keep, obviously, a paper in my backpack with the safety guidelines for the FPVFC. I keep, what the current law is, just even if it's just a breakdown. And all that stuff. So if somebody challenges me, I can say, here's the law. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my Lance application. I'm authorized to fly here. You know, here's, my license and all the fun stuff. I mean, it's the responsibility is also on the pilots to know what the laws are so that they know that they're in the right. You know what I'm saying?
Oh no, correct. Just that, I mean, it wasn't like an anti-police thing. It was just kind of like,
yeah.
how is this going to be approached? Because
Yeah,
I mean, it is already a mess. Like you can talk to two different law enforcement officers, and like you said, you agree they should all know this stuff.
Yeah, they should.
But
And the problem is they don't,
right.
And some may have an inkling, some might actually participate in the hobby, some might not care, But I have a feeling that the near future is going to see a lot of additional training for law enforcement in our country. I don't know, what form that's going to take, but at the same time, hopefully this is one of those things. And I mean, with 1.4 million recreational operators in the country, that's going to be a pretty big deal, right? So
Yeah, and just I think the being a motorcyclist, as a from 14 years old on, when a police pulls you over on a motorcycle, you know all of the things that you've been taught. You remove your helmet, you move slowly, you have on you your license, registration, insurance papers. Everything's in order. It's easily accessible. And so I was able to sit in on the National Press Photographers Association meeting, and there was a presentation by a series of the individuals who lead the drone fleets for the news organizations around the country, and every one of them has their people who are these are professional pilots, UAS pilots. They're doing this every day, and every one of them had a kit. It was part of the bag was a binder with safety guidelines, license approvals, waivers, manuals uh, uh, for the equipment, and as well as the day's mission. And part of this is looking good and doing good, and so they were doing good is that they were adhering to what is required and more than what's required, and looking good is they come off as prepared, professional, and organized. And to me, it's a good way to keep things on the up and up.
I just think I'm imagining some scenario how crazy this would be. You're out flying and a police officer stops by and says, "Hey, could you land that? I need to weigh your drone for you." And they go back
would
in their
be
car. They pull out
hilarious.
their little kitchen scale. You
Oh,
land,
Jesus.
hand it over. I'm sorry, that's 255 grams, so I'm gonna have to take you in now. Like,
Yeah, and then what's it going to be? You're going to have like these what are they, the free travelers or whatever? They're like, oh, I don't need a license to operate a vehicle. Oh, sovereign citizen. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're going to have people. Okay, well, show me a warrant, or okay, what is your what's your Jesus? I can think of sovereign citizen, but I can't spit out what I'm trying to say here either. Like what's your reason for it? Now you're getting into
yeah, probable
obvious
cause or
obvious
something.
stuff. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, what's your problem?
Well, like the FAA would say, well, there's a drone flying in the sky and it doesn't have remote ID. That's probable cause. But if there's a drone
Yeah.
flying in the sky, like, how can you tell from a distance that that's a 200-gram drone or a 400-gram drone? Like,
Well,
one
I mean,
needs remote
here's-
ID and one doesn't.
It's funny because these are a lot of and I'm not, knocking on anybody. These seem like a lot of paranoid things. I imagine if you are doing something you shouldn't be, it's going to be land the drone. Let's talk about what you're doing. I doubt they're going to be pulling out scales or anything like that. I mean, come on. But I
Dan,
mean,
Dan the
honestly,
agitator here.
right?
Well, it all depends if somebody wants to get you in trouble or not. Then they'll just
It
have
does.
more ways to do it.
And I mean, I've
Right.
worked with police, for part of my career, and there are some, like text chat says, if they come out, they take you to jail. They take everybody to jail. That's how they operate,
Right.
but
What-
there are those who probably don't want to do the paperwork and they exist on a, what are you doing? Probably shouldn't be doing that. Go have fun somewhere else, that kind of thing. So, it really does depend. So I would say, training for law enforcement, if they're gonna truly be enforcing this, is gonna be key. In the meantime, it's up to us to be the educators in those situations. So I definitely advocate that you are at least up on the laws, know where to pull them up, have the links on your phone. I'm not saying you need to carry a binder like, Dave was talking about, but have access to that information in a quick manner.
Bring your own scale. Maybe one that's tuned a little bit off.
He's kidding. He's kidding. But having FPVFC safety guidelines on your phone on a PDF is not a bad idea.
Yeah, I have them
Yeah.
printed out in my
Yep.
backpack.
If you're flying in controlled airspace.
Dude, all I can say is, I mean, I've had a friend of mine get inspected by a FAA inspector at the Philly. He got a authorization to do a shoot at the Philly Stadium, and he came out and he asked him all kinds of stuff. I had to send him some of my stuff because he didn't have all of it, like checklists of like what do you brief people. Because I have a whole binder, just like you guys were talking about, and I have even a briefing checklist, a debriefing checklist, things we should cover, and they asked for like log books and maintenance records, and because he's a pilot, a Part 91 pilot, a Part 61 pilot like me, he asked him for his logbook, for his general aviation logbook. He went into all kinds of detail.
My
Yeah.
logbook would be just filled with hit a tree branch, replace 3 props. Hit a tree branch, replace 4 props.
Oh, it's epic.
Hit concrete.
So
Replaced
Yeah, right.
everything.
But I mean, yeah,
Hey,
it's-
everybody. I gotta bounce out of here and say goodbye.
Hey,
it was good
thanks for
talking to you
coming,
guys,
Matt. Yeah, you
Yeah,
too,
Same
bud.
here. Take care.
Welcome
bro.
anytime, bud.
Sounds good. Have a good night, guys.
All right, bye. All right, so
And
I
we
think
have Vic Moss on the line.
yeah, I
saw.
was actually about
Thanks for
to bring that up. So
Yeah.
I was going to bring up the DAC. So the Drone Advisory Committee has selected their new members, of which we did lose DJI, who was a big advocate for recreational. We also lost the AMA on the Drone Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, our own David Messina was not selected. However, we do have Vic Moss, who was selected along with Kenji Sugahara, and they are part of an organization that they just started, similar in vein to kind of what we're doing, but more for the independent operators. So, Vic, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks for being. I'm just sitting here listening. You guys are great. As I've said to some other people, I'm an FPV neophyte. I'm sort of along the lines of let's fix props all the time. But Kenji and I started the SPA. Gosh, a year ago at this point, maybe May. It was right after I left Drone U. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, want to do this?" It's like, sure, why not? And just thinking that we had both applied for the DAC, and David had applied for the DAC. We've been talking to Dave before this even. So we figured worst case scenario, then if we raised money to pay for expenses and stuff like that, one of us could go. So now all of a sudden we're both on the DAC. So it's like, oh dear, because we don't get paid obviously to be there. They don't know, the government doesn't cover our expenses. And everybody else on the DAC is, you look at the list, they're all big businesses. So, it's just me and Kenji, and Dave will be in our corner, obviously, since he's on our board now. So thank you, Dave, for joining our board. And we're just going to try and represent, obviously DSP is for drone service providers, but we're also hobbyists. Kenji's much more into FPV than I am. I'm just now getting some big rigs in, or bigger rigs, I should say. A squirt and a hydrophobe coming probably next week. Still waiting for Troy to finish them and waiting for the goggles, but it's interesting. So I'm just soaking up as much information I can about FPV, so I can be as clued in as I can when stuff comes up, and I can work out and help the industry.
So could you explain a little more what your experience is with FPV, or what Kenji's
Sure.
experience is?
Kenji is, neither one of us are, we're not blazing. Like I'm in Denver. I'm not blazing the blazing downtown. Like I think what is his name? He does some incredible flying downtown.
Yeah, there's a few people in Colorado that
There's
are
a couple,
really good.
yeah, that are just phenomenal. Actually, I'm a US Colorado board member as well, and we talked about one guy in a meeting today, so it was kind of interesting. I started out with Emacs, baby hawks, a couple of those, and they scared the hell out of me, so I didn't fly them very much.
That's awesome.
And I use what the heck are they called? The big box goggles, basically head plays. And then I switched up to, or I didn't switch up, I switched down to the Tiny Hawks. I have 4 Tiny Hawk 2s, a couple of 95X, and then a 65 Beta FPV. Have naked 6s on the 95s. So I mean, I'm having fun, and I'm not putting anything I shoot right now on the on the internet, except some of my fun stuff with the Tiny Hawks. But I've been a drone pilot, a commercial drone pilot for 7 years. So there's that behind me. Illegal for since 107 came out. I never did the 333 route. I got the letter, and so I call myself an FAA certified non-compliant 333 operator until the 107 came out. So.
So you briefly mentioned that Kenji was more into FPV. Do you know more about that?
He has a lot of fun with it. He's done a little bit of work with it he does a lot of video and movies, music videos, that kind of thing, advertising. He's actually shooting a Jeep commercial tomorrow. I'm not sure I was supposed to say that. Anyway, don't repeat that. So he's more into it than I am. It's actually his fault that I spent $3,000 with Troy a couple weeks ago. And so he's not surfing the buildings and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But he's pushed me into it along with Troy.
Well, I know
I'll give Dave credit there too, though. Him talking about it. So
I know, especially on some of the Facebook groups and things, people were complaining that, oh, you guys have no experience with FPV. How are you going to represent the hobby at all? And I'd say you guys are getting experience in FPV, and just the fact that you're here now shows that you're definitely willing to take advice and work with us. And Dave's on the board, so definitely willing to try to represent FPV to the DAC.
Yep. I'm not going to satisfy everybody. I know that. That's cool. XJet and I have gotten into it already once, but it's I want to be able to do the best I can, and it's fun. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of fun flying these little guys around. Like my cats and my dog think it's that funny, but I do.
In addition, the combination of the FPVFC and the DSP alliance would be positive, because the FPVFC is a 501c3, so a charity, education, and we're able to advocate the FAA, and only a small percentage of our any monies that we take in can be allocated to lobbying activities. The DSP Alliance is a 501c6, so that is explicitly can be a trade association or a lobbying organization. So both Vic and Kenji have significant experience working with local, state, county, as well as federal, as well as federal organizations for drone and other regulations. So. And Vic is being modest. He's helped commercial UAS pilots across the country with his deep knowledge, and jumped in and helped any number of lawsuits where folks thought it's a good idea to try to make drones illegal in a municipality. And so we appreciate the help, the background, and we think the relationship will be powerful for FPV pilots as well as commercial, because we feel that we're a benefit to be able to feed from younger people who are into STEM and into FPV into the commercial industry. And the idea of doing this for a living and getting into aviation, be it general aviation or UAS.
Right. And I actually joined FPVFC last week, so there you go.
Thank
Yes,
you
he
very much.
did.
We appreciate it.
I got the email. I was like, "Oh, hey, it's Vic. Nice."
I think I'm
So-
putting my letter word. I even rejoined AMA. I just want you all to know that. I've got words with Rich, but it's like, you know what? If I'm going to represent him, I better my money where my mouth is.
Yep, absolutely. So, it's awesome. I mean, we've operated a long time, to be honest with everybody, without a specific source on the Drone Advisory Committee. So, we've definitely made some allies throughout the years, and those folks are awesome. And Vic is probably going to be as much of a ally as any of those folks, and it's nice that he's a little more close knit in with the FPV family. So we welcome you and Kenji to help us with the Drone Advisory Committee, and have fun with dealing with all that fun bureaucracy, fun stuffs.
It'll be interesting to say the least. And I'm
It
going to
will
give
be.
Dave some props here too, though, because I bet he is more active on the DAC than 90% of the DAC members.
I would probably agree with you. The man puts in a lot of work, and he's on every task group that he can get himself on, and we absolutely appreciate everything he's done. And he's definitely pushing his influence from that route through from the inside of the task group. So we love having Dave. He's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes I
ride
wonder what is the difference between an official DAC member and someone like Dave who's just volunteering to do a lot of work anyway.
Right.
There's
Not much.
well, there's
DAC members get paid more.
We're voting for recommendations to come on, considering activities that will be taken up on the DAC in the future. In addition, at a DAC meeting, if you're only members may speak, and so if I have an issue, I have to just stay quiet.
But the FAA can ignore you all equally, right?
I guess
Yes.
they can.
Absolutely. So, Vic, thank you. Just a lot of thanks for what you've done over the years, coming from me. I followed you before you even knew who I was on Facebook, and just read about all the work you've done with different municipalities around the country, and I'm sure everybody appreciates that work. So
Thank you. It's been interesting, to say the very least. Not where I thought I'd be 5 years ago. I just wanted to fly a drone, take pretty pictures.
I know, right? That's kind of what we all want to do. All right, so I'm gonna wrap. Well, I'm not gonna wrap up because we got like 20 minutes left, but I am gonna introduce a couple articles. So obviously, the big news articles of the week or last couple of weeks has been remote ID. That is an ever dominating subject right now, as you kind of go through the feeds. However, we did have Sony finally unveiled their new Air Peak drone that I did want to kind of touch on. So this thing looks ferocious. Have you looked at this at all, Vic?
I have not. I've been a little busy the last couple of weeks.
I'm sure. So these guys are actually meant to carry a full frame DSLR underneath the drone. So these were announced at CES, and they didn't bring out a lot of details, but you can see it on the image there. It's actually carrying a full frame DSLR on there, a mirrorless one. So they're pretty powerful little guys. It's got, let's see, the Intel drone is designed a Sony Alpha camera as well, and it has a starting price at about $42,000. So hey, there you go. If you're rich, get one of those.
TextJet wants to know if it'll power loop.
I don't know. I'm sure you could probably force it to.
If you start high enough.
Yeah, right. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, this was also revealed at CES, and I thought this was a pretty cool little thing. And if somebody wants to try and figure this one out and let me know how it goes. So this is called a Knuckle 5. and it's meant to control your drone. And then the gentleman who developed it has developed it to play your video games one-handed, by the way. So if you click into the article, you can see that there's a gimbal on the front where your index finger is and a gimbal where your thumb is. So your two axes, I guess, to control your drone would be right there, and you can do it all with one hand. So it's a pretty unique little thing, and I do have the actual website here too.
Looks like it's designed for the right hand. So yeah, I wonder if they're going to do a right hand and left hand.
I'm not sure.
I love things like this because for people who are disabled, particularly vets,
And
this is,
yeah,
this is a fantastic thing.
There's a picture further down showing one for right and left hand.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent.
So, yeah, the gentleman actually designed this for drones, and then he redeveloped parts of it to play video, so that disabled kids could play video games. So
That's great.
pretty cool little device. It'd be interesting to see to get used to controlling two axes with the same hand. That would be definitely an interesting experience, I think. So let's see. This was also pretty cool. This is using kind of sense and avoid technology, but this is a swarm going through a heavy forest. And the first part of the video is like a simulation, about the first half of it. And then they do a demonstration with what looks like a couple small FPV style drones where they're doing live mapping and communicating via network to let them all know what they're mapping, what they're seeing, and how to move. So pretty cool little technology there to circumnavigate tight areas and whatnot. Let's see, it would be a short experience. There you go. All right. Cadillac. Have your own personal drone. Apparently this also came out at CES. So it's a design for a personal one. I think it's a one person. It says it's equipped with a 90 kilowatt hour electric motor that can whisk a passenger off a rooftop to their destination. So no cost, and obviously it's just a concept at this point.
Yeah, it says right there in the thing, if it's ever built.
Yeah. But they've got specs all written up for it. So, hey, there you go.
Yeah, General Motors research is very cool. I had the privilege of meeting some of the guys when I sold in Detroit. Just very, very cool. They're so into vehicles and they're so smart. So it's great to see things like this.
Absolutely. Roof to ground in 3 seconds. There you go. That's awesome. From Drone DJ, we've got these new. So we talked a couple weeks ago. God, it feels like forever. Probably about 3 months ago, about the Ring security cam that I will probably never put in my house. But basically, the Ring flies around your house, and you can kind of give it a map of what to follow. Well, this is taking that to the next level. So this is out of Israel. The Israeli startup Indoor Robotics has designed a quadcopter drone it calls a Tando to keep eye on companies once the employees have gone. So basically operates with rooftop, like ceiling mounted charging pads that the drone can attach to, recharge, drop down, and fly around the building. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat little thing.
Some of the best software developers in the world are in Israel.
Yes, they are.
Facial recognition company called NICE, N-I-C-E, is an Israeli company. Very good products.
Let's see, what else do I have? So we also, this was one of the other major articles that popped up. This company in situ, owned by, it's a Boeing-owned company, is going to be paying $25 million back to the government for charging prices for new parts for their drones charging for parts on their drones that were like they were charging for new parts when they were using used parts or what do you call it, refurbished parts. So they're basically, yeah, it's a problem. And so that's coming out of Portland, and the company is called In-Situ. Dave, I'm gonna pop this up. I haven't had a chance, or Dan or somebody who knows a little bit more about this, I haven't had a chance to watch the video, but Red Cat and Supersonic, they did a long distance flight.
I did watch the Rotor Riot episode about that.
Okay. So this says that a pilot located in Florida was controlling a drone flying in Detroit, Michigan, and it integrated Fat Shark's shark bite system. And the pilot's flight instructions of the drone were transmitted through Skypersonic servers located in Italy. So the controls, basically the inputs were transmitted from Florida to Italy back to Detroit.
Yeah, so basically take your radio, plug it into your laptop, have it send your radio's, signals like you would for a video game.
Yeah.
To a server in Italy. That server in Italy sent that control to a computer in Detroit. That computer in Detroit connected it to a local radio and let you fly a drone in their warehouse.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it did have some latency. Drew could not fly FPV from Florida. He could fly the stabilized mode pretty well, but not FPV. Or not acro mode.
Yeah.
I've not seen the video or read anything about this. Was it highly autonomous, Dan? Did you mention that?
No, it was. I mean, basically, if you took a DJI, it was in like a cage, so that if it bumped into anything, it was safe. But if you took any stabilized drone and just flew it around inside of a warehouse, sort of, and he was cruising it around pretty well, but there was decent latency.
Did it stay inside? It was just flown from a remote location, or did it fly some long, crazy distance?
No, they were all flying within a warehouse indoors. So they would have a local radio, and they'd be flying it, and then they would flip a switch and hand over control to Drew in Florida.
I see. Okay. Hence,
it looked like the whole drone was in like a Dyson sphere kind of thing.
In a ball.
But because it was indoors, no need for any waivers. This was
right
inside. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So, and then they go on to talk about let's see.
So, like, I could imagine, like, one of their use cases is, like, right now people couldn't travel very well. So, let's say some warehouse has a drone somewhere, and they have their pilots across the country, and they need to go inspect something. They'll, be able to fly it from wherever the pilots are and fly around their warehouses, their yards, their factories, or something, and check on things remotely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Skypersonic said that they're upgrading their entire fleet to the new shark bite system. So it's pretty interesting. Let's see. Also, if you are in, just to keep people awares, FAA has issued drone restrictions over 2 more DoD facilities. One of them is in Rock Island Arsenal. It's between Davenport, Iowa, and Rocks Island, Illinois. And the second is the Biometric Technology Center in Clarksburg, West Virginia. If you plan on flying around those DoD locations, please don't. That'd be a bad idea.
I think staying away from our nation's capital might be a good idea for the next couple of weeks from
probably
a drone flying.
Not that you're allowed to fly there anyway.
Yes.
So I think that's about all I have. Some interesting stuff. Let's see. Dan, you do have a meeting scheduled, 7-8 days? With the FAA, yeah?
Dave does, hopefully, maybe.
Did I say Dan? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do. I'll say more about it after the fact.
Don't want to jinx anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Under wraps.
And beyond that, the remote ID has been posted on the register. It looks like, what was the date in there? September 15th?
15. No, not September, but January. Oh, which
It
the
was
posting date
published
was
January 5th. Will be published January 15th.
Right.
Which
Correct.
puts those dates of compliance into like September 2022, September 15th, 2022.
2022 and
September
2023,
15th,
right?
2023. Yes.
Yeah. So the 2022 would be for the manufacturers, and the 2023 September 2023 would be for everybody to be compliant. So
Josh, have you looked into the differences between the PDF the FAA posted and the PDF that's in the register?
I gave it a quick glance, but I didn't see anything right off the bat. I'm gonna dig into it a little deeper. I did look at the bottom, like the bottom of the document where they actually have the verbatim law or verbatim regulation or whatever. None of that looked like it was different. So my guess is that they took out maybe part of the executive summary or part of the comments or something like that somewhere, in the first 400 or so pages.
But they did remove like 50 pages total or something, according to the post.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be that they shrunk the font,
Yeah, that could
so
be.
I mean, realistically. So I will give it a deeper look probably this evening and see if I can find anything that's missing. But so far, looking at the actual letter of the regulation down at the bottom, it doesn't look like anything's changed. So there's that. Any other questions, comments? No?
You mean they don't treat that as a controlled document, so they have to, specify what the changes are and the date and sign off on it?
Well, generally when they do post it, they do cite the like the precursor, like the rough drafts, and then they put the final versions on there. So
Yeah, and the PDF we got on 12/28 was a draft, and so the document control starts on the Federal Register version.
yeah, so
It's a good question.
it is. So if you look at like the FAA,
technically it does start with a draft, but I mean that's not public, so the
Correct.
previous iterations aren't public yet.
Yep.
It's just that would be handy if we had that.
yeah, so
Yes.
it definitely would be. So if you look at like the FAA reauthorization, there was a couple of things that changed from point A to point B, and they have the, I think there's like 5 different drafts on there. So they do track that kind of stuff. I don't know from what we got versus what they posted if there's going to be any changes listed in there, but I will give it a more thorough read. It's just 400 pages is a lot to go through, so I looked at the important stuff first. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Any additional info on like CBOs? Who's going to be one? Things like
No,
that?
not
Yeah.
yet.
We do expect the circular to come out on that shortly. So nothing new, and we have a hunch that the way that's going to work is we'll see the criteria, and then there'll probably be an application, and then we'll apply for that, and then we'll hear if we're accepted as a CBO. But that's mostly speculation on my part.
Yeah. So we're already satisfying the requirements in the FAA reauthorization. So depending on,
we're hoping
extra comes out,
that it doesn't deviate much from that. Exactly.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
So this is Vic. Sorry. I'm going to actually, one of the things I really liked about being on the DAC was I get to work with Wade Troxel here in Colorado, mayor of Fort Collins, but he's no longer on the DAC. But I do know him because I work with him on his airport board, or have worked with him, I should say. And I'm really going to push hard for him to have the NLC put together their own CBO.
National League of Cities.
National League of Cities, sorry. And because if they could put together their own CBO, then cities that already have like drone parks or drone areas to fly, and keep those open.
Yeah, they could mark those as free locations.
Exactly. Yep. That's what I would like them to try and do. And plus, it'll kind of turn their. They're not real thrilled about drones, obviously. If all you do is look at a lot of the California legislation in a lot of the cities who took their verbiage verbatim. So working with them on getting a CBO through the NLC, I think would be a huge step in not only the regular, but the FPV.
Absolutely.
We'll see. I haven't broached him yet on that.
Hey, that's a great idea. I mean, that's really awesome. I know here in Arizona, every city is required to designate at least one park where model aircraft and drones can fly. So, that's been a big help for the community here. And I know there's a lot of flyers here in the Phoenix area that take advantage of those parks. So being able to maintain those and just get them, classified as free as going forward would be awesome as well.
That'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Great idea. Thank you, Vic. All right. Well, with that, I thank you all for joining.
I do have one other quick question.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
So are they doing away with Lance then?
No. So
Nope.
you will still need to use Lance if you are going to fly in controlled airspace.
And a good way to think about the
Okay.
remote ID in general is that the Part 107 and recreational 88409 are still in place. So this just adds regulations to those existing certifications to fly.
Just what we want
Okay.
is more rules to worry about every time we fly.
Right.
Well, that's what I kind of thought, but I wasn't 100% positive.
Yeah. So if you're still flying if you're flying right now in locations that require Lance, you will still need to file those Lance requests going forward. That's not going away. Again, it's remote ID is anywhere you're flying outside of a FRIA, you'll need to have some form of remote ID, whether that's a drone with it built in, which would be a standard remote ID, or a drone with a broadcast module. So yeah.
Yeah, I talked
Okay,
I talked to Alex a little bit about the range requirements a few days ago, but any updates on what Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of that? Like, is it just whatever range you can get from that, and then whoever is just within that area, right, will get it if they're
Right.
looking
So
We think this is a great question because, as you've heard, Elias, DJI has cited the Zenith project back in the UK a couple of years ago with a 20-mile range, and we think that's everything must have been optimized. The location, the equipment, everything. And
perfect
so,
conditions.
yeah, perfect conditions.
Car
So,
battery to
yeah.
power it.
right,
Yeah.
right. And here's
Right.
the thing. I mean,
Right.
in order to keep it keep it affordable in the price range that the FAA has cited, which would be between $20 and $50, it's not going to be anything near like that. You basically in the design and production requirements, it's stated that you must do whatever you can to increase the range or to maximize the
maximize.
range of the broadcast. Yeah. And
But they never put
um,
a number. They've never put a
No.
number to
no,
it.
no, absolutely not. But what they can do is say that's not far enough and decline your design of
Yeah.
basically your means of compliance.
I'll be really
Doc-
curious to see what the first couple modules are that get FCC or FAA authorization, because like, are they going to be with tiny antennas and low power, or are they going to say, oh no,
Yeah.
that's not good enough, it has to be like 1 watt and it has to have a full size antenna hanging off of it?
At which point, I
It'll
think
still get buried in carbon fiber, though. At least
Yeah.
in my builds, anyway.
I still think, I mean, when you start approaching those increased wattages and whatnot, I think the FCC is going to start having issues with it. So it'll be interesting to see where the balance is going to be. I would imagine, maybe somewhere in the one to maybe half mile to maybe 3 mile range would be what they'd be looking for. But I have no backup for that statement.
Do you
So
think they're
don't
going to
quote
come out with? Do you think they're going to come out with an update defining that? Because it's such a gray area right now.
I
I
don't
think
think
once
so.
we
What
start
we're
this-
one of the things we're doing on this DAC work is we're looking around for any academic or government documentation of testing that says this is what we found for aircraft for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so we can try. And I know as soon as we come up with a document, someone's going to say, "Oh, but you didn't consider Bluetooth 5," and so. But we're still. I think it's good to try to establish a baseline so that we can have a better understanding. Plus, have you? I need to track down the ASTM F38 spec on the remote module. I'm not sure if you have a copy of that, Elias.
I don't. Not
Okay.
readily available. No.
Okay, I should. I've joined the committee, and so if I find anything that looks like a real spec in that and not a well written requirement, I'll share it regardless once I
Okay.
track
Thanks,
it
man.
down.
Yeah, I wonder get
Alright, go ahead.
approved. Are they going to be? They're going to have to go through some kind of FAA cert, and that means everyone is only going to have to be able to use those, or can people make their own? Or
Anybody
great.
who wants to make one can submit a means of compliance and go through the process. Now the problem you run into is patents and stuff like that, and possible licensing fees for technology. But I don't think that stops anybody from creating their own. But in order for it to be um, basically legal, it has to go through the FAA process and be listed on the Federal Register as that particular design, that particular company, so on and so forth.
so
I
you
mean, is
pick.
that going to more or less rule out open source?
I don't think
Well,
so.
yeah, open source is used by lots of enterprise companies for all sorts of proprietary code.
But it
Yeah,
would be very
so-
difficult to make it tamper resistant and open source at the same time.
Right. Well, yes.
I mean, you could essentially, if you're doing firmware, you could design the initial firmware in an open source environment where people can contribute. But once it goes on to, let's say, a broadcast module, it would need to be locked down. So it
yeah,
wouldn't be something you would plug into your computer and be able to edit the source code. You may be able to update it. Obviously, that would be a good thing, but you wouldn't be able to actually go in and mess around with the actual source code once it's on the module.
there are also all kinds of other hurdles you have to jump through. Like you have to buy the ASTM standard for your serial numbering, and you have to submit to the FAA, and all of that stuff's going to take a lot of time and money that very few people would ever be able to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the
Right.
production, the declaration of
Declaration of compliance and means
compliance.
of compliance.
Thank you very much. Those
Yeah.
those two are going, and so that's going to require prototyping, testing, submission to the FAA, audits. So time and money in significant amount of time. So there is a push in the final rule for consensus standards, and I'm pretty sure that what they're encouraging is that if we were to create a spec that said this is, if you build to this recipe, it might be acceptable. And it's not clear to me that how then do we get production rights to do this? And so this is done in the gun industry in the United States. So that's an area that I want to investigate in terms of, okay, we get this spec approved. Can we DIY? If it's meets this spec and has these components. But it's that.
Yeah,
it's
that's
the
what I
means-
was kind of getting at. But yeah,
Yeah, it's the means compliance that really makes me nervous that that's not going to be viable.
Yeah. So, I mean, Steve, I don't know if you've had a chance to read our breakdown yet of the remote ID. It is up on our website, but literally the last half of the document, if not the last 5 pages of an 8-page document, all deals with the design and production requirements and the means of compliance and declaration of compliance. That's
yeah,
the hefty part of the whole thing.
yeah, and that's the part I didn't really get
Yeah.
to dig into yet.
Yeah, it's
It's kind of eyes glaze over part, but
this worries me about some of the gotchas. One of the other gotchas was pointed out the other day was the altitude requirements on the accuracy requirement. The current thinking is that will probably require an additional barometer on the aircraft. And so if you add a barometer, forget the weight, the cost to customer is $20.
hey, Dave.
Yeah.
In the document, they actually suggest fervently to not use a barometer, to use GPS altitude calculations.
Understood.
So,
And Alex is saying exactly the right thing. I know.
they want geospatial altitude, not yeah.
Yeah, but the accuracy is a little too difficult to
Oh, is that what it comes down to?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
So there's a gotcha there.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
there's,
how would you know what your altitude above the ground is from GPS exactly?
Time for signal.
Well, you know your distance from a satellite, but if you're in the
Yeah.
bottom of a valley or the top of a mountain, you know your total altitude, but not AGL.
So I believe it's. I don't think they specify AGL. I think they specify just geospatial
Yeah,
altitude.
and you could zero yourself out when you take off and know how high you've gone up, I suppose.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, this is an area I don't know, and I have a hunch where we will probably become expert in this area.
Mhm.
Again, why I'm very curious to see what those first modules are that get approval.
Approved. Absolutely.
We'll be a
we
little
could-
self-serving and drop that in there.
We could certainly meet the intent of the regulations with some open source software. You stick a GPS on your drone and you have a Bluetooth module built into your flight controller, and Betaflight knows how to send out the GPS information. But that would never
Yeah,
pass the FCC's rules.
And Kenji was talking about this opendrone.org. So
Yeah,
there
he
is,
posted it on the Facebook.
yeah, there is an organization who's creating open source to do this, but it's exactly along the lines that you mentioned, Josh. You know, we could definitely see this being developed, but then once it goes into production, it's got to be, if it's in the kernel, it'll have to be ported and rewritten, and then so that it doesn't have to be turned over to the open source committee, and then it'll have to be made proprietary, closed source. It's a step that I'm very familiar with when acquiring companies who are using open source. So it does speed things along, but it can create another step that could add months to the schedule, to the development schedule. But more detail. Yeah, I'm in the weeds. My apologies.
It's easy for us to get in the weeds on this stuff. I mean, obviously, it's stuff that we're passionate about. So,
one more quick thing, just real quick. I know we're getting ready to wrap up. One of the things I think where FPV and radius of the signal, whatever you want to call that, the range, where FPV actually probably wins out a little bit. It's all line of sight. So if I'm 400 feet in the air shooting at a construction site, my radius is going to be a whole lot longer than one of y'all flying around through the trees.
But your line of sight needs to be from on the ground, from your visual observer.
Right. No, I meant radius of the signal.
Yeah, Vic is talking about the broadcast from
Remote
the
ID,
drone,
yeah.
how far remote ID will go.
Right.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes.
I was holding on to that. I forgot we changed subjects. But
Yeah, if I'm
Yeah,
zipping
you know-
along 6 inches off the ground, my remote ID signal is not going to travel very far versus a
Great
drone 300 feet in the air.
Yeah, this is exactly signal strength. What's the RSSI? And this is exactly what I'm researching. I'm looking for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth effective range from aircraft. So I'm with you completely, Vic. And it makes a ton of difference.
And now, if there's also a difference if you're doing like a two-way communication versus just a broadcast. And since this is just sending out a beacon, you don't have to have two-way communication. So what most people think of as like, oh, my cell phone can only go so far from a Bluetooth device is not quite the same thing.
Exactly, and it's going to repeat on a 1 hertz basis. I'm with you. Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm gonna let y'all go. We're 10 minutes over. I don't want to take up the rest of your night. I know a lot of you are. It's probably pretty late, 8, 9, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So
Zarg has the record though.
yes, he sure
coming in-
does.
Coming in from the UK, he's the man.
So
I'm thinking that Part 15 compliant devices won't be able to have much broadcast range.
No, that's
I-
not true.
No.
Your
No.
Wi-Fi devices
good
can have pretty good range.
And a good example of a Part 15 device that has good range is Crossfire.
I don't think he is on the chat, or in the voice. So
Oh yeah, we're talking to nobody.
Okay, then I'll quick respond via.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Vic, for joining in.
And
what's that?
hopefully I can make this fairly regular.
Hey,
That'd be
we'd
great.
appreciate it. We'd love to
Always
have you.
welcome.
All right. And on that note, have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. All right.
Yep. See you guys.
Sounds good.
Very
Take care.
good. Take care.